Welcome to Primetime Debate. Now, a day after Airtel was fined 2.5 crore rupees for opening payments bank accounts of its mobile subscribers without consent, the mobile operator has said it is taking steps to resolve the issue. Now, for subscribers, it was a double whammy. Not only did they not know they have new payment bank accounts, allegedly without their knowledge or consent, but their direct benefit transfers for certain subsidies also started flowing into these accounts, and there were about 31 lakh such accounts. Airtel has promised to return the money, that's 190 crore rupees that came from these accounts, but questions have been raised that should this matter end just here? Why did Airtel open these accounts in the first place? How did direct benefit transfers land up in these accounts? And does it raise larger issues on privacy? Before we get into that debate with our panel this evening, it's important to understand the details of the story. And Sajid Mangat is joining me. He's been tracking the story closely through the day. Sajid, first up, what is Airtel saying? Why would they open these accounts without their customers knowing?
What we understand from our sources is that as part of the verification process and as part of new accounts which are opened by Airtel, Aadhaar is part of that seeding process where Aadhaar is linked to your telephone number. Now, as per the regulation, you can use the same number or the phone number of that which is getting seeded with Aadhaar to open a payments bank account, and that's what was happened in this case as well. That they use the same E-KYC to open an additional account of the individual in the Airtel Payments Bank. Now, it's not known whether these are accounts which have been opened with consent or without consent, because we have complaints from some people saying that they were not aware that such accounts were open.
No, clearly something went wrong, because that's why Airtel was fined and they paid the fine.
So the fine they have paid because they have not followed the route of consent, and that has come from the fact that people have complained on record and said that we were not consulted before an account was paid. The other issue of the entire money going through the DBT or the entire DBT amount going through to this is a systemic issue which has been clarified by the government, and I think NPCI is taking corrective measures. What used to happen is that as per the provisions, NPCI would transfer the money which is coming to them from the government, which is in form of subsidies or any other money, in some cases pension amounts of companies or of individuals, to the latest account which is connected or linked to Aadhaar. Now, this is one way. This was one way of saying that okay, this person's account is active and you have the latest available account which is there.
No, but Sajid, in a situation where so many service providers are asking for an Aadhaar account, and if they are opening payments banks which people don't know about, so your receiving account for your subsidies could keep changing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Today it could be Airtel, tomorrow it could be another company.
Exactly. So technically, while we are talking of Airtel, it could be a larger issue here as well, because you have a lot of payment bank accounts which are opening. And is it happening that the individuals Aadhaar, DBT accounts or any other accounts are now getting linked to Paytm bank or some other payment bank, or for that matter, if you link it to a PSU bank or ICICI or a private sector bank, is that getting changed as we speak? And that's something which is of concern, and which UIDAI has come out and said that you cannot change the account to which DBT is going without the consent of the individual, which was not implemented till now, is going to be implemented.
Which got highlighted after this mix-up. Okay, call it a mix-up, call it what you will, but we need to understand it because it's a bigger issue. Kiran Jonalgadda, co-founder at Internet Freedom Foundation, and AP Hota, former MD and CEO of NPCI, are with us to talk about this. Welcome to both of you. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Hota, with the full knowledge that you do not represent NPCI today, because you are no longer with them, but you are someone who understands the system inside out, sir. So from that perspective of expertise, you should explain to us how something like this could have happened, because think of it from the subscriber's point of view. They were asked to verify their KYC with linking their Aadhaar account. Next they know they have a payments bank account. Next they know their subsidies are going to that account.
There is certainly a lapse in the consent regime, in the way the consent was obtained from the customers. In this connection, one has to be clear how the Aadhaar Payments Bridge or the DBT works. In the Aadhaar Payments Bridge system of NPCI, the payment file comes from the government department through the bank, and in the payment file only the Aadhaar number and the amount is there and nothing else. And NPCI checks for that Aadhaar number what is the bank to which the money would be transferred. And that checking is done through another subsystem called Aadhaar Mapper. That NPCI has built an Aadhaar Mapper where banks seed their accounts and map it in NPCI. That means whenever a new account is opened and it is linked with Aadhaar, they communicate to NPCI that this is the new account that we have opened with Aadhaar, and they would like the payments to come to this Aadhaar, and the consent is there. And the consent is there or not, that comes electronically by setting a flag, whether yes flag or no flag, means whether the consent is there or not. In the instant case where the Airtel Payments Bank, they have uploaded close to about 10 million, as I understand, 10 million such records, there is a flag of yes, that means they have taken consent. Whether actually consent is taken or not, NPCI does not verify. It goes by the operates on good faith. Once that sees that it is yes, that consent is there, then NPCI's Aadhaar Mapper checks whether for that Aadhaar number there is any overdraft issued by any bank, because under the PMJDY scheme there is an overdraft procedure also. If that account holder has taken any overdraft, account holder with that Aadhaar number has taken any overdraft with some other bank, then this will not be posted, or it will not be overwritten, or else it would be overwritten. When I say overwritten, that means it will be an active one, the earlier one would be deactivated. It would be in the mapper, that record would be there, but as the old records would be deactivated. So if a person opens a new account and comes with a consent yes, and there is no overdraft of that account holder with any bank, it would be the default account to which all DBT payments would go. Okay. So this is the way the system operates, and it was expected that Airtel Payments Bank has taken the consent.
This is really interesting, and Kiran, you must come into this conversation, because there has been fairly limited scrutiny and reportage on this case, except to say that Airtel is paying the fine and is transferring back the money. What are the big lessons from it?
Well, I think we're missing something very important here. I'm glad Mr. Hota raised the issue of overdrafts, because payments banks, by their license, are not allowed to extend credit to a customer. So when a payment bank links itself as the default destination for subsidy transfer, they're actually making a joke out of the Prime Minister's Jan Dhan Yojana scheme, because the overdraft that was supposed to be given to the beneficiary is no longer available through a payments bank. And not only that, the money itself is not available. Airtel charges a 0.75% withdrawal fee to take out any money from your account. So it's making a mockery of what the government was trying to do when they set up direct benefit transfers. The other issue, I think, which is Mr. Hota touched on, but I think it needs more scrutiny, is the fact that NPCI operates on the basis of good faith. And I'd like to emphasize on what good faith means over here. It means that any bank can claim to hold anybody's account, and NPCI does not verify. NPCI only expects a paper trail to be maintained in case there is a report of fraud. We know that Airtel committed fraud because it was such a large scale. What we do not know is how much more fraud has happened that has not been reported, because there is no mechanism to detect fraud, only to act on it when it's reported.
The key question over here, Mr. Hota, is when you talk about... Yeah, do come in, sir.
I would like to here clarify that the payments bank cannot really grant overdraft, but they can certainly give the credit to the customer's account. You know, if the DBT comes, the question is that there was no consent to open the account and link it with the Aadhaar. That is the crucial issue, or else there is no harm or there is no restriction on their receiving the customers of payments bank getting the DBT payments to their account. The overdraft can be granted, cannot be granted. That is a different issue altogether. You know what? At NPCI level, we do the checking of overdraft just to see that, because there is an overdraft, we would not like the money to really go to a bank other than the bank which has granted the overdraft. If the payment banks have not, since they cannot really grant overdraft, that does not mean that they cannot get DBT payments. In fact, the very idea of the payments bank is that they should open account, means the financial inclusion would become deeper. The people who did not have bank account, they will open the account, and several kinds of benefits would come. But you know, this is something for regulator to ponder also, that possibly the payment banks, they are not targeting the real people who do not have the bank account. Like from this episode itself, it is very clear, of about 10 million customers which Airtel Payments Bank have introduced, and they have really put in the Aadhaar mapper. 8 million is they already had accounts with some other bank. So that means hardly about 2 million new accounts have been opened by them.
Hota,
all the 10 million accounts they have opened.
Sure, Mr. Hota, I just want to come in here because I think we're missing the elephant in the room. The big glaring question: what is informed consent? What is explicit consent? Who will decide whether there is consent? And how do you prove that there was consent? We're talking about this in a situation where not just Airtel, but all mobile companies, they have given targets to their end retailers. They have to add people. Do people know that their payment bank accounts are being opened? Most people may not even know, and that is something which has come up here. Don't you think that that's one big loophole, I would call it?
No, I would we should appreciate that the regulator allowed the telcos, to be the banks, the payment banks. Idea was that they will bring synergy. They have got a large customer base who have mobile phones but who do not have bank account, and they will be able to open bank accounts. That was the very purpose, that was brought the rationale for which the telcos have been given preference over other entities in grant of license for payment bank, and they were given. But now the fact, now we notice that these payment banks have not been able to open accounts to the right segment. Means 4/5 of the new bank accounts are opened. They already had bank accounts with other banks. That is what I am telling. This is one. And second factor is Aadhaar has the facility for E-KYC. So if a single entity, of course legally there are two entities, payments bank and the telcos, but they can operate with a single operating platform. So if they do that on a single KYC, doing both, if it is feasible, why not to do it? But at the same time, the consent needs to be taken. My guess, my assessment is that many customers may not be knowing that a bank account has been opened. That means the consent is not there. Actually, technically, as I understand from my colleagues in NPCI, and as per the discussion, some consent was there technically, but in spirit, actually, the customers do not know that even a bank account is getting opened.
Kiran, I want you to come in on this. What is technical consent?
Well, technically, E-KYC is not consent, and I think this is a myth that has been propagated by UIDA. That's a serious problem. So let me explain what this is. If you take the analog version, if I go to a bank and they want proof of ID and I gave them a copy of my passport or my driving card license or my PAN card, that piece of paper is not authorization to open a bank account in my name. It is purely a copy of my identification. And E-KYC is a digital version of the exact same thing. It is not authorization to open a bank account in my name. So the fact that E-KYC is being used to open bank accounts is itself misuse of the very idea of consent. It's technically not consent at all.
Do you think, Kiran, that larger questions now emerge from this incident?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's highlighting how broken the entire Aadhaar ecosystem is, going all the way from the fact that today UIDAI issued regulations to NPCI on how banks may work with NPCI to update Aadhaar mapper. That's RBI's domain. There is no reason why UIDAI should be telling banks how to behave. So there is the problem of authority. There is the problem of technology. The entire system is broken. They confuse identification with authentication, and then they confuse authentication with authorization. These are all different things, and you can't simply say that because I have a copy of your identity, it means I have obtained your consent to do something with your identity. They're not related at all. And the very fact that UIDAI itself keeps pushing these ideas on everyone indicates how poor their own understanding of what they're doing is. And that's a serious concern.
Okay, let's look ahead, Mr. Hota, as someone who understands the system in and out. What do you think should be the next step to safeguard against a repeat of this?
I suppose the opening of bank account, that consent has to be absolutely clear. In the screen, one option comes whether you agree for account of the opening of the account, and customer not knowing really what it is. Default would be yes. So customer does not know that he is really giving the consent for the opening of the account. I would say that E-KYC, I would beg to differ from my colleague on the panel, that E-KYC is certainly a step forward in opening of accounts. It makes the task much easier without the use of papers. Without use of lot of data entry, the account can be opened. But what is very important is whether the customer is really aware that account is being opened. Absolutely. Because if the customer is not aware, possibly the spirit for which the technology has been put in place is defeated. Really, that is not implemented in right spirit.
I think that's the point Kiran was also making.
There is nothing wrong in technology.
Yeah, but there shouldn't be misuse, and there should be a protection against possible misuse. I'll have to end it there, but thank you so much, AP Hota and Kiran Gadda, for joining in on this conversation. It's one case, but it does raise red flags to watch out for when the entire debate about Aadhaar privacy and linking your Aadhaar card to your mobile comes up.